Topping our news tonight, a Prince George's police officer is killed while trying to help his neighbor who was involved in a domestic violence incident. Neighbors say police were at the house very often. Byron Scott has the details.
Somebody in the community needed him, knew he was a police officer, and sought him for help and assistance.
It happened just before 10:30 this morning in Brandywine. A woman who was involved in a domestic violence incident knocked on the door of a neighbor, a police officer, asking for help.
He immediately responded to that plea for help, and shortly thereafter found himself in a confrontation with a man armed with a shotgun.
Prince George's County police officer Mujahid Ramzadin was shot and killed.
He led a consequential life, and he suffered a consequential death. But he saved her life by giving his own.
The shooter fled in a car and was caught in Charles County.
I will tell you that the individual who was responsible for this was subsequently shot and killed by Prince George's County police officers. I will tell my community what I know. 2 of our officers were involved in that confrontation.
We just know that they barricaded our home a couple of times last week.
Neighbor and former police officer Earlene Harris says police were at the shooter's house just last week.
I'm sad about the whole thing. One, because that's my brother in blue. 2, just what happened. I have children, my neighbors, they have kids. Anything could have happened to them coming, home or anything, And again, I'm saddened by, the officer being killed. My heart goes out to his family.
Ramzadin was an ex-Marine and on the police force for 13 years. Today was his day off.
Officer Ramzadin was not only an amazing officer, a Valor Award-winning officer, but he just also happened to be his mother's only son. He was the husband to his wife and the father of 4 children. And so we grieve so deeply today with the police department and with every member of the Prince George's County family.
We are in Palmer Park, and Corporal Mujahid Ramzadin's vehicle, is cruiser number 5851, is parked outside police headquarters here. You can see flowers on the vehicle and black bunting as a symbol of mourning. 51-year-old Prince George's County police officer Mujahid Ramzadin died yesterday while trying to help a neighbor in distress. And this, police say, is the man who shot him 5 times. 37-year-old Glenn Tyndall. Investigators say Tyndall grabbed Ramzadin's gun after the shooting and fled.
That he left Prince George's County, traveled into Charles County. Our peers in Charles County were completely aware of the situation. They brought this to our attention as they came back into Prince George's County, where we together intervened. And as I said before, the offender lost his life in a confrontation with 2 of my officers.
Police say Tyndall was with his estranged wife yesterday when they became involved in a domestic dispute. She went to Ramzadin's house and asked for help. Police say there were warrants out for his arrest for assault. Neighbor and former police officer Earlene Harris said police were at the shooter's house last week.
We were awakened several times last week with the police, with battering rams, on the loudspeaker, asking him to, turn himself in, but to no avail.
Ramzadin was on the force 14 years and assigned to the department's harbor unit. In 2006, he was awarded the Medal of Honor for courage while engaging an armed suspect. He was an only child, a husband, and father of 4. Ramzadin was honored during prayers here last night at the Diyanet Center of America. He was remembered as a devout Muslim, and his funeral will be held here tomorrow. In Lanham, Byron Scott, CTV News.
A somber and gloomy day in Prince George's County as a slain police officer is laid to rest days after he was shot and killed. Coming to the aid of a neighbor, Mujahid Ramzadin is remembered as a hero. His funeral was held at the Diyanet Center in Lanham this afternoon. Countless officers and community leaders came out to pay their respects.
The nation's mosque, also known as Masjid Muhammad.
This one we call Mujahid. This name, one striving and struggling to bring out the best in himself. This is the Mujahid, the one who's struggling in the cause of good. Any cause of good is the cause of God. And that's one of the things that was said about our dear brother, this husband, this father, is that he was a good man.
Mujahid Ramzadin lived a consequential life. And in sacrificing himself to save another, he died a consequential death.
My father was in his house just relaxing, and he heard a knock at the door. He could have stayed in his bed, but he didn't. You know, without hesitation, my dad went out there to assist that young lady. He didn't know that, you know, he was going to get shot 5 times. You know, he protected that lady, and it cost him his life.
Clearly very emotional service. Ramazuddin was 51 years old. He leaves behind a wife and 4 children. The funeral procession for Officer Ramazuddin arrived at the DNet Center in Lanham at 11:30 this morning. This was a scene as the Herson family arrived at the mosque. Ramazuddin was a devout Muslim, and the service relatively brief outside of the mosque. While there were police from across the region, there wasn't that presence of people from around the state as well. The list of speakers included 2 imams, along with the police chief, Hank Stawinski, and his son.
When I saw him, was helping with parking, especially on the Friday prayer services. Him and other officers would help with that too. He was very well liked, and just hearing other people's stories about him, a strong family man, you know, recently married not too many years ago. So it's a tragic loss for the community.
I just think it's very devastating that something like this would happen, and you know, in today's time. But as you know, these kind of things do tend to happen. I just think that as a community, we need to come together more, love one another more, support one another more. So those are really my thoughts on it.
Service, the procession left the center and went to Fort Lincoln Cemetery in Brentwood for the burial.
News.